The summer sun beat down hard on the Arizona desert in 1887. Tom Mackenzie wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched his cattle graze near the waterhole. He had been ranching this land for 15 long years, and he knew every rock, every cactus, and every animal on his property. But today, something was different. His best horse, Thunder, was acting strange. Very strange. Thunder was a big quarter horse with a dark brown coat that shined like copper in the sunlight. This horse had never given Tom any trouble. Thunder was steady, calm, and smart. Tom trusted this horse with his life. On the frontier, a good horse could mean the difference between living and dying. For the past 3 days, Thunder kept walking to the same spot on the eastern edge of the ranch. The horse would stand there, pawing at the ground with his front hooves. He would lift his head high and make soft whinnying sounds. Then he would look back at Tom as if trying to say something important. Tom had seen horses act strange before. Sometimes they could sense things that humans couldn't. Wild animals, storms coming, even earthquakes. His father had taught him to pay attention when animals acted different. "What's got into you, boy?" Tom asked, walking over to Thunder. He ran his hand along the horse's neck. Thunder's muscles felt tense under his touch. The horse turned his big brown eyes toward Tom, then looked back toward the rocky hills. Thunder took a few steps in that direction, then stopped and looked back again. Tom had work to do. The cattle needed checking. The fence on the north side had a broken post that needed fixing. But Thunder's behavior was bothering him. In all his years on this ranch, he had never seen Thunder act like this. The rocky area where Thunder kept going was about a mile from the main ranch house. It was rough country with lots of big stones and thick bushes. Not many people went there because it was hard to ride through. Even the cattle avoided that area because the ground was too rocky for good grass. Tom decided to ignore Thunder's strange behavior and get back to work. But as the day went on, Thunder became more restless. Every time Tom got on his back to ride, Thunder would try to go toward those eastern rocks. By evening, Tom was getting worried. Thunder barely touched his food. The horse stood by the fence looking toward the hills even as darkness fell over the desert. That night, Tom couldn't sleep well. He kept thinking about Thunder's behavior. His late wife, Catherine, used to say that animals could sense things that people missed. She always listened when their old dog would bark at nothing or when the chickens acted nervous. The next morning, Thunder was still restless. As soon as Tom stepped outside, the horse came running over to him. Thunder pushed against Tom with his nose, then walked a few steps toward the rocky hills. Tom made his decision. He had learned long ago to trust his animals. If Thunder thought something was important in those rocks, then Tom needed to find out what it was. He put his rifle in the saddle holder, filled his water bottle, and climbed onto Thunder's back. The horse seemed happy that Tom was finally listening to him. They rode slowly toward the eastern hills. The morning air was still cool, but Tom knew it would be blazing hot within a few hours. The desert could be beautiful, but it was also dangerous. Many people had died out here from heat, thirst, or wild animals. As they got closer to the rocky area, Thunder became more excited. His ears pointed forward, and he stepped carefully but quickly over the rough ground. Tom had to duck low to avoid the thorny branches of mesquite trees. The rocks here were huge, some as big as houses. Over thousands of years, wind and rain had carved strange shapes in the stone. There were narrow spaces between the rocks where a person could hide from the sun or from enemies. Thunder led Tom deeper into the maze of rocks. The horse seemed to know exactly where he was going. Tom began to wonder if Thunder had been coming here on his own when no one was watching. Suddenly, Thunder stopped. The horse stood very still, his ears forward, listening to something Tom couldn't hear. Then Thunder made a soft nickering sound, the kind of gentle noise he made when greeting a friend. Tom looked around but saw nothing unusual. Just rocks, bushes, and cactus plants, but Thunder was staring at a dark shadow under a large overhanging rock. "What is it, boy?" Tom whispered. Thunder took a few careful steps closer to the shadowy area. Then Tom saw something that made his heart skip a beat. There was someone there, someone lying very still in the shadows. Tom climbed down from Thunder's back and pulled his rifle from its holder. The frontier was a dangerous place, and he had to be careful. But as he got closer, he could see that whoever was there wasn't moving. His boots made soft sounds on the sandy ground as he approached the rock shelter. Thunder followed quietly behind him, still making those gentle nickering sounds. What Tom found under the rocks would change his life forever, but he didn't know that yet. All he knew was that Thunder had led him to something important, something that needed his help. The shadow under the rock was deep and cool. Tom had to wait a moment for his eyes to adjust to the darkness after being in the bright desert sun, and then he saw her. Tom's hand shook as he lowered his rifle. What he saw in the shadows made him forget about being careful or protecting himself. A young woman lay curled up against the rock wall. Her long black hair was tangled and dirty. Her clothes were torn and stained with something dark that Tom realized was blood. She wasn't moving. Tom quickly set his rifle aside and knelt down beside her. He could see she was breathing, but just barely. Her skin felt hot with fever when he gently touched her forehead. The woman was Apache. Tom could tell by her traditional clothing and the beadwork on her leather dress. In this part of Arizona, that meant trouble. The Apache and the white settlers had been fighting for years. Many people on both sides had died in the violence. But looking at this wounded woman, Tom didn't see an enemy. He saw someone who needed help. Her left shoulder was wrapped in strips of cloth that were soaked with blood. The makeshift bandage was dirty and looked like it had been there for days. Tom could see where a bullet had torn through her shoulder. Without proper care, she would die from infection or blood loss. Thunder came closer and lowered his big head near the woman. The horse sniffed gently, then made soft sounds like he was trying to comfort her. "Easy, boy," Tom whispered. "We need to help her." Tom had seen many gunshot wounds during his time on the frontier. This one was bad but not hopeless. The bullet had gone clean through her shoulder without hitting any major bones. If he could get her back to the ranch and treat the wound properly, she might survive. But first, he had to figure out how to move her without making her injuries worse. The woman stirred slightly when Tom touched her good arm. Her eyes opened just a crack. They were dark brown, almost black, and filled with pain and fear. She tried to say something, but her voice was just a whisper. Her lips were cracked from thirst. Tom reached for his water bottle. "Here," he said softly. "Drink this." He helped her take small sips of water. She drank eagerly, like someone who hadn't had water in a long time. As she became more alert, fear filled her eyes. She tried to pull away from Tom, but she was too weak to move far. "It's okay," Tom said, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help." The woman stared at him with suspicious eyes. She had good reason to be afraid. Many white men in this territory would shoot an Apache on sight. Some even collected scalps for money. Tom could see she was trying to figure out if he was friend or enemy. Her right hand moved slightly toward a small knife on her belt, but she was too weak to grab it. "Look," Tom said, pointing to Thunder. "My horse found you. He knew you needed help." Thunder seemed to understand. The big horse moved closer and gently nuzzled the woman's good hand with his soft nose. Something amazing happened then. The fear in the woman's eyes softened just a little. She looked at Thunder with wonder, as if she couldn't believe a horse was being so gentle with her. Tom knew he had to move fast. The desert heat was getting stronger and the woman needed medical attention soon. "I'm going to lift you onto my horse," Tom explained, even though he wasn't sure she understood English. "We need to get you to my ranch where I can take care of your wound." The woman tried to shake her head, but the movement made her wince with pain. Tom understood her fear. Taking her to his ranch meant trusting a white stranger completely. For an Apache woman, that could mean walking into a trap, but she was dying. They both knew it. Tom moved very slowly and carefully. He slipped one arm under her knees and the other behind her back, being extra careful not to touch her wounded shoulder. She was lighter than he expected, probably because she hadn't eaten in days. As he lifted her, she made a small sound of pain but didn't fight him. Thunder stood perfectly still as Tom approached with the woman in his arms. This was unusual because Thunder was normally nervous around strangers, but somehow the horse seemed to understand that this person needed special care. Tom had to think carefully about how to get both himself and the woman onto Thunder's back. The woman was barely conscious and couldn't hold on by herself. He decided to sit the woman in front of him on the saddle. That way he could hold the reins with one hand and keep her steady with the other arm. Getting onto Thunder while holding the woman was the hardest part. Tom had to be strong and careful at the same time. Thunder helped by standing rock still and even lowering himself slightly to make it easier. Once they were both on Thunder's back, Tom wrapped his left arm gently around the woman's waist to keep her from falling. She leaned back against his chest, too weak to sit up straight. "Easy, Thunder," Tom said. "Take us home slowly." The ride back to the ranch took almost an hour. Tom had to go slowly to avoid jolting the woman's injured shoulder. Several times she nearly fainted from the pain and heat. Thunder seemed to understand the situation perfectly. The horse picked his way carefully over the rough ground, avoiding rocks and holes that might cause a bumpy ride. As they got closer to the ranch, Tom started worrying about what he was doing. Helping an Apache woman could get him in serious trouble with his neighbors. Some people in the territory would call him a traitor. But looking down at the wounded woman in his arms, Tom knew he was doing the right thing. She was a human being who needed help. That was all that mattered. The ranch house came into view just as the woman lost consciousness again. Her head fell back against Tom's shoulder, and he could feel how hot she was with fever. Thunder carried them right up to the front porch of the house. The horse stopped and stood perfectly still, waiting for Tom to get down. Tom knew the next few hours would determine whether this young woman lived or died. And somehow he also knew that helping her was going to change his life in ways he couldn't imagine. Tom carried the unconscious woman into his ranch house. The wooden floors creaked under his boots as he made his way to the bedroom where he and his late wife Catherine used to sleep. The room still smelled faintly of the lavender soap Catherine had loved. Her medical supplies were still in the dresser drawer, exactly where she had left them before the fever took her life 2 years ago. Tom gently laid the woman on the bed. In the soft light coming through the window, he could see just how badly hurt she was. Besides the gunshot wound, she had cuts and bruises all over her arms and legs. Her clothes were torn in several places. He had learned basic medical skills from Catherine, who had been the closest thing to a doctor for miles around. People used to ride for hours to get her help when someone was sick or injured. Tom heated water on the wood stove and gathered the supplies he would need. Clean cloth for bandages, a bottle of whiskey to clean the wound, needle and thread for stitching, and some of Catherine's herbal medicines that might help fight infection. The hardest part was cutting away the blood-soaked cloth around the woman's shoulder. She stirred and moaned in pain but didn't wake up completely. The bullet wound was worse than Tom had thought. The bullet had torn through muscle and left a ragged hole. The edges of the wound were red and swollen with infection. Tom cleaned the wound as gently as he could with whiskey and warm water. The woman's eyes fluttered open during the cleaning and she cried out in Apache. Tom couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the pain and fear in her voice. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know it hurts, but I have to clean it." She looked at him with those dark eyes, still not sure if she could trust him. But she was too weak to fight, so she lay still and let him work. Tom had to stitch the worst part of the wound closed. His hands were steady, but he had never sewn up a gunshot wound before. Catherine had always been better at the delicate work. When he was done, he wrapped the shoulder in clean white bandages. Then he covered the woman with one of Catherine's quilts and let her rest. For the next 3 days, Tom barely left her side. He made broth from beef bones and tried to get her to drink a little whenever she was awake. He changed her bandages twice a day and gave her water mixed with willow bark to help with the pain and fever. Thunder spent most of his time right outside the bedroom window. The big horse would stand there for hours, occasionally making soft nickering sounds toward the house. On the 4th day, the woman's fever finally broke. Tom woke up that morning to find her watching him from the bed. Her eyes were clear and alert for the first time since he had found her. She tried to sit up, but the movement made her dizzy. Tom helped her lean back against the pillows. "How long?" she asked in English. Her voice was hoarse, but Tom was surprised that she could speak his language. 4 days, Tom replied. "You've been very sick." She looked around the room, taking in the furniture, the curtains, the woman's belongings that were still there. "Your woman?" she asked, pointing to a photograph of Catherine on the dresser. "My wife," Tom said quietly. "She died 2 years ago." The woman nodded slowly. She seemed to understand about loss. "I am Ayanna," she said after a moment. "Tom," he replied, pointing to himself. Ayanna tried to move her injured arm and winced. "The bullet?" "Gone clean through," Tom explained. "You'll heal, but it will take time." Over the next few days, Ayanna grew stronger. She was able to sit up and eat solid food. Tom learned that she understood quite a bit of English, even though she didn't speak it perfectly. She told him bits and pieces of what had happened to her. Bad men with guns, her people running. She was the only one who got away. Tom didn't push her for details. He could see the pain in her eyes when she talked about it. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. Ayanna was fascinated by Thunder. Every day she would sit by the window and watch the horse grazing in the pasture. Thunder always seemed to know when she was looking at him. He would lift his head and look right back at her. "He found you," Tom told her one day. "Thunder led me to where you were hiding." I don't know how he knew you were there. Ayanna smiled for the first time since Tom had found her. Horses know things, she said. Better than people sometimes. As she got stronger, Ayanna started helping around the house. She could only use one arm, but she insisted on doing what she could. She made tea from plants she recognized growing near the house. She helped prepare meals, showing Tom how to cook certain foods in ways he had never tried. Tom was amazed by how much she knew about plants and healing. She pointed out herbs growing wild around the ranch that could be used for medicine. Some of them were plants Catherine had used, but Ayanna knew others that Tom had never heard of. Your woman was a healer? Ayanna asked one day. Yes, Tom said. People came from far away when they were sick. She taught you well, Ayanna said, touching her healing shoulder. You saved my life. One evening, as they sat on the front porch watching the sunset, Ayanna asked Tom why he had helped her. Any decent person would have done the same, Tom said. Ayanna shook her head. Not true. Many white men would have left me to die. Or worse, Tom thought about that. It was true that helping an Apache woman was dangerous for him. If certain people found out, they might cause him serious trouble. Thunder found you for a reason, Tom said finally. I believe things happen for a purpose. Ayanna looked out at Thunder, who was rolling in the dust near the water trough. The big horse seemed completely content. Maybe Thunder knew we both needed a friend, she said quietly. That night, Tom realized that for the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel lonely. Having Ayanna in the house had brought life back to the empty rooms. Her laugh, her questions about everything, even her struggle to find the right English words. It all made the ranch feel like a home again. But Tom also knew that this peaceful time couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, someone would come looking for an Apache woman, and when that happened, both their lives would be in danger. 2 weeks after Tom found Ayanna, she was strong enough to walk around the ranch without getting tired. Her shoulder was healing well, though she still couldn't lift her left arm very high. That evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Ayanna finally told Tom the full story of what had happened to her. We were traveling to meet with other families, she began, staring into the flames. My father, my mother, my 2 younger brothers, and 3 other families. We were going to a safe place in the mountains where the army couldn't find us. Tom listened quietly, not wanting to interrupt. The second day of travel, men on horses came, white men with guns. They had been following our trail. Ayanna's voice became very quiet. These men they collect. They take... She struggled to find the English words. Scalps, Tom said grimly. He knew about the bounty hunters who killed Apache people for money. Ayanna nodded. They want money from Mexico. $50 for each Apache scalp. Tom felt sick. He had heard rumors about such men, but he had hoped they were just stories. My father tried to talk to them, Ayanna continued. He spoke English. He said we were peaceful people just trying to find a safe place to live. But the leader, he just laughed. Tears rolled down Ayanna's cheeks as she remembered. They started shooting. Everyone ran in different directions. I saw my little brother fall. Then my mother. Her voice broke. Tom wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know what to say. How could anyone comfort someone who had lost everything? I ran into the rocks and hid, Ayanna said. One of the men found me. He shot me in the shoulder, but I rolled behind a big stone. He thought I was dead. How did you get away? Tom asked gently. I waited until night, then I crawled. For 2 days I crawled and walked. No water, no food. I thought I would die like the others. Ayanna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I found that place where Thunder discovered me. I thought it was a good place to die, hidden from the bad men. Tom felt anger burning in his chest. Those bounty hunters were murderers, not men. They had killed an entire family for money. Do you know who they were? Tom asked. The leader, the other men called him Garrett. Big man with yellow hair and a scar on his face. Ayanna touched her own cheek to show where the scar was. Tom knew that name. Buck Garrett was known throughout the territory as a dangerous man. He claimed to be hunting outlaws, but everyone knew he would kill anyone for the right price. Garrett is bad news, Tom told Ayanna. He's wanted by the law in 2 states, but no one has been able to catch him. Over the next few days, Tom watched Ayanna carefully. He could see that telling her story had helped her in some ways, but it had also brought back painful memories. She often stared off into the distance, lost in thought. Sometimes at night, Tom heard her crying quietly in her room, but Ayanna was strong. Gradually, she began to take more interest in life around the ranch. She was especially drawn to the horses. Tom had 6 horses besides Thunder. Ayanna seemed to understand them in a way that amazed Tom. She could calm a nervous horse just by talking to it softly in Apache. She could tell when a horse was getting sick before Tom even noticed anything wrong. "Your people are good with horses," Tom said one day as he watched Ayanna gentle a young colt that had been difficult to handle. "My grandfather taught me," Ayanna said. "He said horses and people speak the same language in their hearts." Tom was beginning to understand what she meant. Thunder had definitely spoken to his heart the day he led Tom to find Ayanna. One afternoon, while Tom was fixing a fence, Ayanna came running to him with worry in her eyes. "Riders coming," she said, pointing toward the main road. Tom looked where she was pointing and saw dust clouds in the distance. 3 men on horseback were heading toward the ranch. "Go inside," Tom told Ayanna quickly. "Stay away from the windows." Ayanna nodded and ran toward the house. Tom noticed that Thunder had also seen the riders. The big horse trotted over to stand between the approaching men and the house, as if he wanted to protect Ayanna too. The 3 men rode up to Tom's front porch. They were rough-looking characters with guns on their hips and mean expressions on their faces. The man in front was tall and thick, with yellow hair and a white scar running down his left cheek. Buck Garrett. "Afternoon," Garrett said, but his voice wasn't friendly. "We're looking for an Apache woman. Young one. She's wanted for stealing horses." Tom kept his face calm even though his heart was racing. "Haven't seen any Apache around here." "You sure about that?" Garrett's eyes were cold and dangerous. "We tracked her to this area. Trail went cold somewhere near your land." "Like I said, haven't seen anyone," Tom replied. He noticed that Thunder was standing very still, watching the men with his ears forward. One of Garrett's men pointed at the ground near the porch. "Boss, look at these tracks." Tom's blood went cold. There in the dirt were small footprints that could only belong to a woman. Garrett climbed down from his horse and looked at the tracks carefully. "These are fresh," he said, looking up at Tom with suspicion. "And they're moccasin prints. Could be old tracks," Tom said, trying to sound casual. "Wind probably just uncovered them." Garrett laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're lying, Mackenzie. That Apache woman is here somewhere." Tom's hand moved slowly toward his gun. These men were killers and they weren't going to give up easily. "Search the house," Garrett ordered his men. "You have no right," Tom said firmly. "This is my property." "We have every right to search for a dangerous criminal," Garrett said. "Now step aside or we'll go through you." Tom knew he couldn't fight 3 armed men and win, but he also couldn't let them find Ayanna. Just then, Thunder did something unexpected. The big horse walked over to Garrett and began sniffing around his boots and saddle. "Get that horse away from me," Garrett snarled, pushing at Thunder. But Thunder kept sniffing. Then the horse made a loud snorting sound and stepped back, shaking his head like he smelled something bad. Tom realized what Thunder was doing. The horse was buying him time to think. "Look," Tom said, "if there was an Apache woman here, don't you think my horse would be nervous? Thunder here has never liked strangers, especially Indians. But look at him. He's calm as can be." It was a lie, but it was believable. Many horses were afraid of people who smelled different or wore different clothes. Garrett looked at Thunder, who was now grazing peacefully nearby. The bounty hunter seemed less certain than before. "We'll be back," Garrett finally said, climbing onto his horse. "If I find out you're hiding that woman, you'll pay for it." The 3 men rode away, but Tom knew they would return. And next time, they might bring more men with them. Tom waited until the riders were completely out of sight before calling for Ayanna. She came out of the house, her face pale with fear. "They're looking for you," Tom said. "And they're not going to give up." Ayanna nodded. "I heard. The one with the scar, that's Garrett. He killed my family." Tom felt the anger rise in him again. But anger wouldn't help them now. They needed a plan. "He'll be back," Tom said, "probably with more men. We need to figure out what to do." Ayanna looked at Thunder, who had come over to stand beside her. "Maybe it's time for me to leave," she said quietly. "No," Tom said firmly. "You're not strong enough yet. And besides, they'll just track you down again." But Tom knew their peaceful time together was over. The danger had found them, and soon they would have to make some very difficult choices. In the days after Garrett's visit, Tom and Ayanna grew closer as they faced the danger together. They both knew the bounty hunters would return, but instead of living in fear, they decided to make the most of their time. Ayana taught Tom things about the desert that he had never learned in his 15 years of ranching. She showed him which cactus fruits were good to eat and when they were ripe. She found a plant that could soothe Thunder's sore muscles after a hard day of work. "See this leaf?" Ayana said, holding up a gray-green plant. "Crush it and rub on cuts. Heals faster than your white man's medicine." Tom tried it on a scrape on his hand, and Ayana was right. The cut healed in half the time it usually took. She also taught him to read the sky and wind in ways that could save his life. "When clouds look like this," she said, pointing to thin, wispy formations, "big storm comes in 2 days. When wind smells like this," she sniffed the air, "rain tonight." Tom found himself fascinated by her knowledge. "How do you know all this?" "My grandmother taught me." Her grandmother taught her. "Apache women learn these things as children. We have to know how to survive." Ayana paused. "Your women don't learn this?" "Some do," Tom said, thinking of Catherine. "My wife knew about healing plants, but not like you do." In return, Tom taught Ayana more English and showed her how ranch life worked. She was a quick learner and seemed genuinely interested in everything. She was amazed by his cattle. "So many cows in one place," she said, watching the herd grazing. "How do you keep track of them all?" Tom explained about branding and roundups. Ayana listened carefully, asking smart questions that showed she understood the challenges of managing livestock. But it was with the horses that Ayana truly amazed Tom. She had a gift that went beyond anything he had ever seen. One morning, Tom found her in the corral with Dancer, a young mare that had been impossible to train. Dancer had kicked 2 experienced cowboys and refused to let anyone get close to her. But there was Ayana, standing quietly beside the mare, running her hands along Dancer's neck. The horse was calm and relaxed, as if Ayana was an old friend. "How did you do that?" Tom asked in wonder. "I listen to what she tells me," Ayana said simply. "This horse, she's not mean. She's afraid. Someone hurt her when she was young." Ayana spent the next hour working with Dancer, speaking to her in a mixture of Apache and English. By the end of the session, the mare was following Ayana around the corral like a gentle dog. "Your grandfather teach you that too?" Tom asked. Ayana smiled. "Some things cannot be taught. They come from here." She touched her heart. Tom began letting Ayana work with all the difficult horses. She had a way of understanding what each animal needed. Some needed gentle encouragement. Others needed firm boundaries. A few just needed someone to listen to them. Thunder, of course, was Ayana's favorite. The big horse followed her everywhere when she was outside. If she sat on the porch, Thunder would graze nearby, always keeping her in sight. "I think Thunder believes he's your guardian," Tom said one evening. "Maybe he is," Ayana replied. "Apache people believe animals can be spirit guides. They protect us and teach us. What do you think Thunder is teaching us?" Ayana thought for a moment. "That kindness is stronger than fear. That different people can be friends." As the weeks passed, Tom found himself looking forward to their conversations each evening. Ayana had a different way of seeing the world that made him think about things he had never considered before. She talked about how the Apache people lived with the land instead of trying to control it. "White men want to own the earth," she said. "Apache people know the earth owns us." Tom had always thought of his ranch as his property, something he owned and controlled. But listening to Ayana, he began to see it differently. Maybe he was just taking care of this piece of land for a while. Ayana was also curious about Tom's life before she came to the ranch. She asked about Catherine and seemed sad when Tom told her how his wife had died. "You loved her very much," Ayana said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Tom said quietly. "We were married for 12 years. She was my best friend." "She would be happy that you helped me," Ayana said with certainty. "How do you know?" "Because a woman who heals people has a good heart. She would want her husband to have a good heart too." One day, while they were working together to repair a water trough, Ayana asked Tom about his family. "No children?" she asked. Tom's face became sad. "Catherine and I wanted children, but it never happened. That was our greatest sorrow." Ayana nodded understandingly. "Sometimes the spirits have different plans for people." "Do you have children?" Tom asked. "No, I was to be married next spring." Ayana's voice became quiet. "He was killed with the others." Tom felt a deep sadness for all the life that Ayana had lost. Not just her family, but her future, her dreams, everything she had planned. "I'm sorry," Tom said. "It's the way of life," Ayana said. But Tom could hear the pain in her voice. Apache people know that nothing lasts forever. We enjoy good times when they come. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Tom realized that he was happier than he had been in years. Despite the danger they faced, despite the uncertain future, he felt alive again. Ayanna seemed to feel it too. She laughed more often now. She had learned to cook some of Tom's favorite foods, and he had learned to appreciate the flavors she brought to their meals. They had developed their own routines and rhythms. Tom would do the heavy ranch work while Ayanna tended the garden she had planted and worked with the horses. In the evenings, they would sit together and talk about everything and nothing, but always in the back of their minds was the knowledge that this peaceful time was borrowed. Garrett would return, and when he did, everything would change. One night, as Tom lay in his bed listening to the coyotes howl in the distance, he realized something that surprised him. He wasn't just protecting Ayanna anymore. He was protecting the life they had built together. For the first time since Catherine's death, Tom could imagine a future that included love and companionship. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. What would happen when Garrett came back? Would Tom be strong enough to protect the woman who had brought joy back into his life? Only time would tell. But one thing Tom knew for certain: he wasn't going to give up without a fight. Thunder seemed to sense the growing bond between Tom and Ayanna. The horse often positioned himself where he could watch over both of them at the same time. It was as if Thunder knew that the three of them were becoming a family, and maybe Tom thought that's exactly what they were becoming. 3 weeks after Garrett's first visit, Tom was fixing a fence post when Thunder suddenly lifted his head and stared toward the main road. The horse's ears were pointed forward and his whole body was tense. Tom had learned to trust Thunder's instincts completely. "What is it, boy?" he asked quietly. Then Tom heard it too. The sound of many horses moving fast across the desert. Too many horses to be friendly visitors. "Ayanna," Tom called toward the house. "Company coming." Ayanna appeared at the door immediately. She had been watching for this day, just like Tom. Without a word, she disappeared back inside to hide. Tom counted the dust clouds as they got closer. At least 6 riders, maybe more. This time Garrett wasn't taking any chances. Tom checked his rifle and made sure it was loaded. He positioned himself on the front porch where he could see the approaching riders clearly. Thunder trotted over to stand beside the porch steps. The big horse planted himself there like a guardian, watching the road with calm but alert eyes. The riders came into view a few minutes later. Tom counted 7 men, all armed and looking dangerous. Garrett rode in front, his scarred face grim with determination. Behind Garrett were 6 of the roughest men Tom had ever seen. These weren't just bounty hunters. They looked like outlaws and killers. The group rode right up to Tom's front yard and spread out in a semicircle. Tom noticed they positioned themselves so he couldn't escape in any direction. "Mackenzie," Garrett said, touching the brim of his hat in a mocking greeting. "Told you we'd be back." "What do you want, Garrett?" Tom kept his voice steady and his hand near his gun. "Same thing as before. That Apache woman. We know she's here. Like I told you before, there's no Apache woman here." Garrett smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. "See, that's where you're wrong. We've been watching your place. My men have seen her." Tom's heart sank, but he kept his face calm. "Your men are seeing things. Am I?" Garrett pulled a piece of cloth from his saddlebag. It was torn and stained, but Tom recognized it immediately. It was a piece of Ayanna's dress that had been caught on a fence wire near the creek. "Found this on your property yesterday," Garrett said. "Apache beadwork. Fresh tears in the fabric." Tom realized that Ayanna must have snagged her dress while working in the garden. Such a small thing, but it was enough to prove she was there. "Could be old," Tom said, but he knew it sounded weak. Garrett laughed. "Nice try, Mackenzie. But we both know better." One of Garrett's men leaned forward in his saddle. "Boss, why don't we just search the place? If she's here, we'll find her." "Patience, Charlie," Garrett said. "Mr. Mackenzie here is going to cooperate." "Aren't you, Mackenzie?" Tom looked at the 7 armed men surrounding him. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but he wasn't going to give up without a fight. "I don't know what you think you're going to find, but you're not searching my house without proper authority." "Authority?" Garrett's voice turned ugly. "I'm the only authority you need to worry about out here." Thunder suddenly stepped forward and snorted loudly at Garrett's horse. The bounty hunter's mount shied sideways, nearly unseating Garrett. "Control your animal," Garrett snarled, fighting to stay in the saddle. "Thunder doesn't like the smell of something," Tom said calmly. He's real good at sensing danger. Several of Garrett's men laughed at their leader's struggle with his horse. Garrett's face turned red with embarrassment and anger. Enough games, Garrett said through gritted teeth. Charlie, you and Pete search the house. Rest of you, search the barn and outbuildings. The men started to dismount, but Tom stepped forward with his rifle ready. First man who steps on my porch gets shot, Tom said quietly. The men hesitated, looking at Garrett for orders. You can't fight all of us, Mackenzie, Garrett said. Maybe not, but I can take at least 3 of you with me. Question is, which 3 want to die today? Tom's calm tone made his threat even more frightening. The bounty hunters had expected him to back down when faced with superior numbers. There was a long, tense moment when nobody moved. Tom could hear Thunder breathing beside him. Even the big horse seemed to be holding his breath. Then, from inside the house came the sound of something falling and breaking. Everyone turned toward the noise. Tom's heart pounded as he realized Ayanna must have accidentally knocked something over while trying to hide. Well, well, Garrett said with a nasty grin. Sounds like someone's home after all. Could be a cat, Tom said desperately. House cats knock things over all the time. Sure they do, Garrett said. Charlie, go around back. Pete, you and Jake watch the sides. She's not getting away this time. As the men moved to surround the house, Tom knew he was running out of options. He couldn't shoot all of them and they would find Ayanna eventually. But Thunder had other ideas. The big horse suddenly reared up on his hind legs with a loud whinny. Then he charged straight at Garrett's horse, teeth bared and hooves flashing. Garrett's horse panicked and bolted, carrying the bounty hunter away from the house at a dead run. Thunder chased them for about 50 yards before stopping and trotting back to the porch. What the hell was that about? One of the men shouted. Tom was as surprised as anyone, but he tried to use Thunder's distraction to his advantage. Like I said, Thunder doesn't like strangers, especially ones that mean trouble. By the time Garrett got his horse under control and rode back, he was furious. That animal is dangerous, he yelled. It should be shot. Thunder's just protecting his territory, Tom said. Can't blame a horse for that. Garrett glared at Thunder, who stood calmly beside Tom as if nothing had happened. I'm done playing games, Garrett said. Men, search every inch of this place, and if that horse causes any more trouble, shoot it. You harm my horse, and I'll kill you myself, Tom said with cold fury. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Everyone could feel how serious Tom was. Garrett studied Tom's face for a long moment. Then he made a decision that surprised everyone. We'll be back, he said finally. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we'll be back. And next time we're bringing enough men to search this place properly. Why not today? One of his men asked. Garrett looked at Tom, then at Thunder, then back at Tom. Because Mackenzie here is ready to die for whatever he's hiding. That means it's important to him. And if it's that important to him, it's worth a lot to us. Garrett wheeled his horse around to face his men. Mount up. We're leaving. But boss, Charlie started to protest. I said mount up. Garrett's voice cracked like a whip. The bounty hunters reluctantly got back on their horses. But Tom could see the confusion and anger in their faces. They didn't understand why their leader was giving up so easily. As they rode away, Garrett called back over his shoulder. Enjoy your peace while it lasts, Mackenzie. We'll be back with enough men to take this place apart board by board. Tom watched until the riders disappeared over a hill. Only then did he allow himself to relax slightly. Thunder nudged Tom's shoulder with his nose as if to say, we showed them, didn't we? Yes, boy, Tom said, patting the horse's neck. But they'll be back. And next time we might not be so lucky. Ayanna appeared at the door, her face pale with fear. I heard everything, she said quietly. I'm sorry I made noise. I knocked over a lamp. It's okay, Tom said. They already knew you were here. Ayanna looked toward the direction where the bounty hunters had disappeared. They will come back, she said. With more men, Tom nodded grimly. Garrett's not the type to give up. He'll be back with enough firepower to take whatever he wants. Then I must leave, Ayanna said. Before they return. No, Tom said firmly. We'll figure something else out. But as he looked at the determination in Ayanna's eyes, Tom realized that she had already made up her mind. The question wasn't whether she would leave, but when. And Tom knew that when that time came, he would have to make the hardest choice of his life. That night, Tom couldn't sleep. He sat on his front porch listening to the sounds of the desert and thinking about what Garrett had said. The bounty hunter would be back, probably within days, and next time he would bring an army. Ayanna came outside and sat beside him on the porch steps. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They both knew what had to be discussed, but neither wanted to be the first to say it. Finally, Ayanna broke the silence. "I have to leave." "Tom, you know that." Tom had been dreading these words, but hearing them still felt like a punch to the stomach. "Where would you go?" he asked quietly. "Garrett and his men know this whole territory. They'll track you down. I'll go north into the mountains. There are places where Apache people still live free, if I can reach them, if," Tom said. "That's a long way through dangerous country, and you're still not fully healed." Ayanna touched her shoulder, which was much better but still weak. "I'm strong enough. Are you?" Tom turned to look at her in the moonlight. "Strong enough to outrun men on horseback? Strong enough to survive in the desert without supplies? I survived before you found me. Barely. And you almost died." They sat in silence again, both lost in their own thoughts. Thunder stood nearby, grazing peacefully in the moonlight. But Tom noticed the horse's ears kept moving, always listening for trouble. "There's another way," Tom said suddenly. "What do you mean?" Tom had been thinking about this for hours, but he hadn't been sure he was brave enough to suggest it. Now, facing the certainty of losing Ayanna, he found his courage. "There's a place on my land that Garrett doesn't know about. A hidden canyon about 5 miles north of here. My father showed it to me when I was a boy, but I don't think anyone else knows it exists." Ayanna looked interested. "Hidden how?" "The entrance is behind a rock slide. Looks like solid cliff face unless you know exactly where to look. Inside, there's a small valley with water and grass. My father used to take cattle there during bad winters." "And you think I could hide there?" "We could hide there," Tom corrected. "Both of us." Ayanna stared at him. "Tom, you can't leave your ranch. This is your home, your life." "What life?" Tom's voice was more bitter than he intended. "Working alone, talking to horses because there's nobody else to talk to? That's not living, Ayanna. That's just surviving. But your cattle, your land, and can be rebuilt. You can't be brought back from the dead." Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. "If we both disappear, Garrett will know you helped me. He'll never stop hunting us. Let him hunt. The canyon is like a fortress. One way in, one way out, and easy to defend. We could hold off a dozen men from the high ground. And then what? Live like prisoners forever?" Tom realized he hadn't thought that far ahead. He was so focused on keeping Ayanna safe that he hadn't considered what would happen after they escaped. "I don't know," he admitted, "but at least we'd be alive to figure it out." Ayanna stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. Thunder lifted his head and watched her as if sensing her distress. "There's something else," she said without turning around. "Something I haven't told you." Tom felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "What?" "Garrett isn't just hunting me for bounty money. He's hunting me because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." "What did you see?" Ayanna turned back to face Tom. Her face was pale in the moonlight. "The day my family was killed, I heard Garrett talking to one of his men. He wasn't just collecting scalps for Mexico. He was being paid by someone here in Arizona territory, someone who wants all the Apache people dead or driven away." Tom felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. Someone with enough money to hire a gang of killers. Someone with enough power to make sure Garrett never gets arrested for his crimes. "Do you know who?" "I heard a name. Colonel Bradley." Tom's blood went cold. Colonel James Bradley was one of the most powerful men in the territory. He owned mines, cattle ranches, and had connections all the way to Washington. If Bradley was behind Garrett's killing spree, then no place in Arizona would be safe. "Bradley wants the Apache land for his mining operations," Tom said slowly, "so he's paying Garrett to clear them out. That's why Garrett can't let me live. I'm the only witness to what he's really doing." Now Tom understood why Garrett was so determined to find Ayanna. It wasn't just about bounty money anymore. It was about protecting a conspiracy that went all the way to the top of territorial government. "All the more reason to disappear," Tom said. "If Bradley is involved, Garrett has unlimited resources. He'll keep coming until I'm dead," Ayanna finished. "Yes, I know." Thunder suddenly lifted his head and looked toward the road. Both Tom and Ayanna froze, listening for whatever had caught the horse's attention. At first, Tom heard nothing unusual. Then, very faintly, came the sound of a single horse moving slowly through the desert. "Probably just a traveler," Tom whispered, but he reached for his rifle anyway. The horse sounds got closer, then stopped about a quarter mile from the house. Tom and Ayanna waited in tense silence. A few minutes later, they heard the horse moving again, but this time the sounds were getting farther away. "Scout," Ayanna said quietly. Garrett sent someone to watch the house. Tom realized she was right. Garrett wasn't going to attack tonight, but he was making sure Tom and Ayanna didn't try to escape. "How many men do you think he has watching us?" Tom asked. "Probably one on each side of the ranch, maybe more." "Then we're trapped, for now," Ayanna said. "But men get tired. They get careless, and they don't know about your hidden canyon." Tom looked at her with new respect. Despite everything she had been through, Ayanna was thinking like a survivor, not a victim. "So what do you suggest?" "We wait until tomorrow night. Let them think we're not planning anything. Then we make our move." "What about supplies? We'll need food, water, blankets." "I can gather what we need during the day. Make it look like normal ranch work." Tom nodded slowly. The plan was risky, but it was better than sitting around waiting for Garrett to return with an army. "What about Thunder?" Tom asked. "I can't leave him here for Garrett to shoot." "Thunder comes with us," Ayanna said firmly. "He found me for a reason. We stay together." As if he understood what they were discussing, Thunder walked over to the porch and nuzzled Ayanna's hand. "See?" she said, smiling for the first time that evening. "He agrees." Tom felt a mixture of fear and excitement as they made their plans. Tomorrow night they would either escape to freedom or die trying. But for the first time since Garrett's visit, Tom felt hope. Whatever happened, they would face it together. And maybe, if they were very lucky and very smart, they might just survive long enough to bring down the conspiracy that had destroyed Ayanna's family. The three of them, Tom, Ayanna, and Thunder, against the world. Tom liked those odds better than he probably should have. The next day passed slowly as Tom and Ayanna prepared for their escape. They had to act normal while secretly gathering everything they would need to survive in the hidden canyon. Tom spent the morning checking his cattle, all the while watching for Garrett's scouts. He spotted at least 2 men positioned on hills around his property, confirming that they were being watched constantly. Ayanna worked in the garden and around the house, but she was really collecting food, medicine, and other supplies. She was careful to take only small amounts so the watchers wouldn't notice anything missing. Thunder seemed to sense that something important was happening. The big horse stayed close to both Tom and Ayanna all day, more alert than usual. As evening approached, Tom felt his nerves getting tighter. Everything depended on timing and luck. If they were caught trying to escape, Garrett would have no reason to keep them alive. Just after sunset, Tom saddled Thunder and loaded the supplies they had gathered. Blankets, food, water, ammunition, and medical supplies were packed in bundles that could be carried easily. "Ready?" Tom asked Ayanna. She nodded, but Tom could see the fear in her eyes. They were gambling everything on this desperate plan. Tom had chosen their route carefully. Instead of heading directly toward the hidden canyon, they would circle around to the south first, then approach from an unexpected direction. They led Thunder away from the ranch on foot, moving slowly and quietly. The big horse seemed to understand the need for silence, placing his hooves carefully to avoid making noise. It took 2 hours to circle around to their starting point. By then the moon was high and bright, giving them enough light to see but also making them visible to anyone watching. The entrance to the hidden canyon was exactly where Tom remembered it, behind a rock slide that had happened decades ago. There was a narrow gap just wide enough for a horse and rider. "I can't see anything," Ayanna whispered, looking at what appeared to be solid rock. "Trust me," Tom said, leading Thunder toward the cliff face. At the last moment, Tom turned sharply to the right, and suddenly they were walking through a narrow passage between 2 massive rocks. The passage was so narrow that Thunder's sides almost touched the walls. After about 50 feet, the passage opened up into a beautiful small valley. Grass grew thick on the valley floor, and a clear stream ran along one side. The valley was completely surrounded by high cliffs, making it invisible from the outside. "It's wonderful," Ayanna breathed, looking around in amazement. Tom felt a surge of relief. They had made it safely, and the canyon was just as he remembered it. There was everything they needed to survive: water, grass for Thunder, and shelter from the weather. They spent the rest of the night setting up a simple camp. Tom found the cave his father had used for storage, and they arranged their supplies inside. For the first few days they stayed hidden in the canyon, waiting to see if Garrett would discover their escape. Tom climbed to the highest point of the canyon walls each morning to watch for searchers. On the third day, he saw them. At least 20 riders spread out across the desert, searching every gulch and rock formation. Garrett had brought an army just as he had promised. The searchers came close to the canyon entrance several times, but the hidden passage was too well concealed. From outside, it looked like solid cliff face. After a week, the searchers moved on to other areas. Tom and Ayanna began to relax, thinking they had escaped successfully, but their real test came 2 weeks later. Tom was watering thunder at the stream when he heard voices echoing off the canyon walls. Someone was in the passage coming toward the valley. Tom grabbed his rifle and motioned for Ayanna to hide behind some rocks. Thunder lifted his head and listened, his ears pointing toward the passage entrance. 3 men emerged from the passage, all carrying guns. Tom recognized one of them as Charlie, Garrett's right-hand man. Well, Charlie called out when he spotted Tom. Looks like we found Mackenzie's little hideout. Tom kept his rifle ready but didn't raise it yet. You're trespassing, Charlie. Not anymore, we ain't. Garrett sent us to give you a message. What message? Charlie grinned nastily. He knows you're here, and he knows you got that Apache woman with you. But he's willing to make a deal. Tom was surprised. What kind of deal? Garrett's got bigger problems now. Seems someone went to the territorial governor about Colonel Bradley's little arrangement. The Army's asking questions about all them dead Apache families. Tom felt a surge of hope. So Garrett's in trouble. Big trouble. Bradley cut him loose to save his own skin. Now Garrett's got federal marshals hunting him. Then why isn't he running? Because he figures if he can deliver you and the woman to Bradley, the colonel might protect him again. Tom raised his rifle slightly. And you think I'm going to just hand her over? Nope, Charlie said. But here's the deal. Garrett says if you let the woman go, he'll let you live. You can keep your little hideout here and nobody will bother you again. And if I refuse, then Garrett comes back with enough men to blast this whole canyon to pieces. He knows where you are now. You can't hide forever. Tom looked at Charlie's 2 companions. They seemed nervous, constantly looking around as if expecting an attack. How do I know Garrett will keep his word? Tom asked. You don't, Charlie admitted. But it's the only deal you're gonna get. I need time to think about it. You got until tomorrow night. If we don't see that Apache woman walking out of here by sunset, we start shooting. The 3 men turned and walked back toward the passage entrance. But before they reached it, Thunder did something unexpected. The big horse trotted over to Charlie and began sniffing at the man's boots and gun belt, just like he had done with Garrett. Get that horse away from me, Charlie snarled, pushing at Thunder. But Thunder kept sniffing, then suddenly reared up and struck out with his front hooves. Charlie dove to one side, barely avoiding being trampled. That horse is crazy, one of the other men shouted. Thunder chased all 3 men toward the passage entrance, nipping at their heels and making angry, whinnying sounds. Tom watched in amazement as his gentle horse drove the armed men away like a fierce guard dog. When Thunder trotted back to Tom, the horse seemed quite pleased with himself. What was that about, boy? Tom asked, patting Thunder's neck. Then Tom noticed something glinting in the grass where Charlie had been standing. He walked over and picked up a small brass object. It was a bullet casing, fresh, from a rifle that had been fired recently. Tom examined the casing carefully. The markings told him it was from a military rifle, the kind used by cavalry soldiers. Suddenly, Tom understood what Thunder had been telling him. The horse had smelled gunpowder on Charlie's clothes. Recent gunpowder. These men had been in a fight very recently, probably with federal marshals, which meant Garrett was more desperate than ever. And desperate men did desperate things. That evening, as Tom and Ayanna sat by their small fire, they discussed their options. Garrett won't keep his word, Ayanna said firmly. If I surrender, he'll kill both of us. I know, Tom agreed. But we can't fight 20 men. Maybe we don't have to. Tom looked at her questioningly. You said someone reported Bradley to the territorial governor. That means there are people in authority who want to stop this. So maybe instead of running, we should find those people and tell them what we know. Tom thought about it. It was risky, but it might be their only chance to end this nightmare permanently. The territorial capital is 2 days' ride, Tom said, through country that Garrett controls. Thunder knows the desert, Ayanna said. He can find paths that men on foot can't follow. The next morning, instead of waiting for Garrett's deadline, they made their choice. They gathered their supplies and prepared to leave the hidden canyon. Not to surrender, but to fight back. 3 months later, Tom and Ayanna sat in a courtroom in Tucson, watching as Buck Garrett was sentenced to hang for murder. The evidence they had provided, combined with testimony from other survivors, had been enough to convict him. Colonel Bradley had already fled the territory, but federal marshals were hunting him across 3 states. The Apache people who had survived Bradley's campaign were given safe passage to reservations where they could live in peace. And Tom and Ayanna, they had returned to the ranch, but not as the same people who had left it. 6 months after Garrett's trial, they were married in a simple ceremony at the little church in town. Thunder stood outside during the service, decorated with ribbons and flowers. The hidden canyon became their special place. They would ride there often, especially when they needed to remember how far they had come. Ayanna proved to be everything Tom had hoped for in a partner. She helped him manage the ranch with skills he never could have imagined. The horses especially flourished under her care. 2 years later, their first child was born, a son they named Thunder, after the horse who had brought them together. Old Thunder lived for many more years, always the gentle guardian of the family he had helped create. When children came to visit the ranch, Thunder would let them ride on his back, as patient and kind as ever. The story of the horse who found a wounded Apache woman became legend in that part of Arizona. People said Thunder had been sent by the spirits to bring 2 lonely souls together. Tom and Ayanna never argued with that explanation. They had learned that some things in life couldn't be explained, only accepted with gratitude.